The show seems to act like there are no otherworldly things outside of vampires, but there are an odd handful of episodes that stray away from that, such as a few involving psychics.
Miss Ford has given us results many times in the past.
Now I'm gonna get some chips or sleep or something.
Please enjoy this effect shot. More about other paranormal stuff later. I will now show you this clip without context.
What are you?
Think of me as your guardian angel. I have just granted you your darkest wish. Get out!
Worth mentioning is Dying for Fame, an episode simply there to be a music video, complete with a bunch of rock and roll cliches. It's cheesy as all get out. But to be fair, this seems like a freaking awesome band. It's obvious since this was early on that the showmakers were experimenting with what they wanted to do, so it's kind of off. The episode is filled with a bunch of strange dream sequences, like Nick eating french fries at an old 50s diner and Jeanette and Lacroix are servers there. Like, in the middle of the investigation, he'll just daydream some fantasy where he's in a music video, or he and Lacroix are in the band. What the hell? Give in to the leather pants, Nicola. You cannot resist. This is the most padded, awesome episode ever. In another episode, scientists determine an asteroid will hit the Earth in 3 months and destroy all life, which later turns out to be a hoax, but never mind that for now. So everyone has to deal with the end of the world in their own way. People start rioting and looting, committing suicide, and vampires start killing out in the open. It raises a good question. What happens to vampires when mortals are gone? According to Lacroix, most vampires will starve to death, but older vampires can't be killed that way, at least not for a long time. Living, in his case, is worse than death. Vampires need mortals. Their lives are intrinsically connected. Without them, it's just existing. Even Lacroix has to admit that it must be a cruel god if this is what he created. Not everything went well for Forever Night behind the scenes. In fact, it kind of sucked. Get it? I already mentioned the tiny budget, but that's the least of this program's problems. The show was cancelled after each season and then brought back by fan demand. There was a year and a half between season 1 and 2, and that was the easiest season transition for them. When they got to their third and last season, that's when shit hit the fan. First of all, the series was moved to a new network, making their budget even smaller. They went from CBS to the USA Network, who forced a lot of changes to the show. The most prominent change was the typical network younger and sexier shtick, where if it isn't broken, just add new characters because screw you. Rumor has it they wanted the show to drop Catherine Disher because they felt she was too old, which is ridiculous. Geraint Wyn Davies refused to do the show without her, so she was kept on, but Natalie and Nick's romance took a huge backseat. To follow that up, halfway through the season, USA dropped the show because they didn't like their own changes. So it was picked up and finished by the Sci-Fi Channel. It was rough, and you can tell. The season premiere is pretty much the worst. Have a look and bask, folks.
Maybe Myra will want to fool around a little.
Nick jokes about having sex with Skanky's wife now?
Oh hey Skanky, who I'm really talking to on the phone. Can't wait to see you when you get back from your trip.
Oh no, Skanky was on that plane. Talk about going out with a bang, huh?
Okay, so no shit. Skanky and Cohen are just blown up in a plane without even appearing. There's not even a voiceover during Nick's phone call or anything. Two main characters are just unceremoniously exploded. Myra's grand total of one screen appearance is just like 2 seconds. We don't even get to see her reaction to the news, nor Skanky's daughter. Which, hey, is more than Cohen gets. She barely even gets a mention. I mean, if you want to start the season completely alienating viewers, that's the perfect way to go about it. But it's not just the opener. The whole episode is a rancid pile of vomit. Listen to this plot. A serial killer is sending explosive boxes of chocolates that play music somehow. Oh, jeez. While Nick works on the case in the present, we see flashbacks of when he was on the Titanic, because of course he was on the Titanic. He meets a woman who has purchased a black Buddha statue, said to curse anyone who removes it from its temple with death and destruction. So apparently the episode is implying that the Titanic sank because of a cursed statue, and it grants whoever owns it one wish or something, whatever. Nick believes that Skanky and Cohen's deaths are because of this statue, which he has kept. But why would the curse only be taking effect now? And why is this the tragedy he counts? Surely he's had a lot of other tragedies since 1912? Not only that, but he believes Natalie and her work to try and cure him was the wish he asked for. What a load. Okay, look, not to be nitpicky or anything, but she hasn't actually cured him. Did he wish for false hope and disappointment? But it's left open whether the curse is real or not. In the end, it doesn't really matter. It's not a good device to use for Nick's guilt when there's already a perfectly good reason for him to blame himself for Skanky and Cohen's deaths. It's a really, really poor connection between the flashbacks and the present, and doesn't make a lick of sense for Nick to believe, especially considering how long it's taken for this to come up and Nick's general skepticism about other supernatural forces. Part of it is because Nick wants a reason for these deaths, which is explored a bit better in the second half of this two-parter. Searching for the killer's motive was all he needed. The Buddha plot just seems contrived at best, childish at worst. And wanting a motive makes sense. It almost makes it harder when you never know the reason, but it doesn't make it better even if you know. But then they gotta mess up this sort of somber message with this.
Black magic, voodoo, bombers in the sky. People kill people. And I don't know why.
Yeah, that's really deep, Lacroix. You can read that and more in Lurder Commits Murder by Dr. Seuss. So one of the dick-tastic moves from the USA Network was mandating these younger, cooler characters. And man oh man, do they try way too hard to appeal to the young people.
Ice it, dude.
I mean, I didn't think Forever Knight was unhip before, but now it just comes off like your dad trying to relate to the rap music. So Captain Reese partners Nick with the sexy new detective Tracy Vetter, the inexperienced daughter of a police commissioner. She wants to prove herself in the field and be known for her accomplishments, not her father's. And hey, if they wanted to introduce a character who was promoted undeservedly and living in the shadow of a more accomplished person, well, congrats, they succeeded. Okay, I'm probably being a bit harsh on her, and certainly none of this is the actress's fault. She does just fine in her role, and I did appreciate that rather than trying to make Tracy and Nick a romantic relationship, Nick treats Tracy more like a good friend or a daughter. If they had to do it, that's probably the route I would go. As for Tracy as a character, she can come off a bit childish at times, sometimes more so than a detective should. But mostly, her story is attached to a different romance. Whether or not you like her is probably gonna hinge on if you like Vashaun.
He stole my car.
And what a screaming fine ride it is, too.
Whoa, tubular, man!
Okay, so Vashaun is one of the new vampires in the cast, and the only important one. He has a gang of friends who were just copies of Nick's friends. He's got a Jeanette, a Lacroix, a Natalie, and I guess a Skanky? I don't know what that was. They even give Jeanette 2.0 a similar backstory where she worked for men, this time dancing instead of being a prostitute, and then finds herself protective of a woman with a similar profession in modern day who ultimately betrays her. The season opener is partially dedicated to setting up the other new characters, along with the Titanic plot, the chocolate box serial killer, and mourning the death of two beloved main characters. You got all that? Because half of it is dedicated to setting up the story for the newer cast members, not enough time is dedicated to properly sending off Skanky and Cohen or the plot at hand. A precinct is blown up, but instead we gotta focus on Nick looking for his partner while they set up the Vashaun/Tracy romance. Why should anyone care about this? Don't we already have a vampire love story with Natalie and Nick? Tracy is rescued by Vashaun, finds out about him being a vampire, and falls in love. This leads to her trying to keep this a secret from Nick, who she doesn't know is a vampire. Nick finds out from Vashaun that she knows but doesn't tell her. So he knows that she knows, and she's trying to keep him from knowing what he already knows, while he and Vashaun try to keep her from knowing that he's also a vampire for absolutely no reason. It's so overly complicated, it's ridiculous. This goes on for all season. Tracy is ready to believe anything, and Nick pretends to be a skeptic. Why does he do this? Because there can't be a buddy team without the skeptic-believer dynamic? And because Tracy and Vashaun almost always have their own things going on, it makes the show feel even more disjointed. It's not that I hate Vashaun. In fact, he's very likable and charismatic. And if this had been a different show, I probably would have been really interested to see what he had to offer. But he just doesn't have a point here, and isn't utilized in a way that makes him worth adding this late in the game. At first, I was worried they were going to make the show all about Vashaun, the cool new character the kids will like. You know, the Slimer principle. Welcome back to Vashaun and the Real Ghostbusters. Luckily, this was not the case after his initial appearance. However, they kind of went the opposite direction and barely had him do anything to justify him being a main character. Hell, Nick and Vashaun's first meeting is off-screen. In that same vein, I don't hate the Tracy Vashaun love story, except for how tacked on it seems. It is kind of funny how uptight she is, versus his sort of laid-back, give-no-shit attitude. On the other hand, Vashaun is kind of a douche.
Remember the days when you could see something like that pass by and just take her, not worrying about the consequences?
Regrettably, times have changed.
Remember the good old days when we could just rape and kill women? Those were the days, Vashaun, my buddy.
Why am I here? Yeah, I'm not even done talking about the season opener. Okay, so remember how a precinct just blew up and Nick's on the case? Yeah, he's just gonna stop in the middle of that to ask some vampire stranger about his story for no reason. I mean, the audience knows this guy is going after Vashaun, but for all Nick knows, this is just some random vampire he came across. Vashaun was a conquistador who was turned as he lay dying with an Incan man he was fighting. The vampire who turned them tells them to stop senseless killing in the world before killing herself senselessly. Vashaun didn't want to hang around with his enemy, who's only ever named the Inca, so he tried to kill him and has been running ever since. For some reason, everyone acts like this was a promise he made, even though he was turned while he was dying, and we see no evidence of him making such a promise, and apparently it was a dick move of him to not hold this agreement.
There will come a day when you will have to stop and live up to your worth.
So why does Nick care about this?
Well, here's a bomb that will conveniently write me out of the story. Bye!
Thanks for the reused explosion footage show! Oh yeah, and Vashaun is the one who kills the bomber. This was kind of an important case, show. Way to steal Nick's thunder, Dushan. Other weird things about Season 3. Vampires can grow their hands back.
If your first kill isn't human, you don't hunger for humans.
And, what? Oh yeah, I should probably mention Jeanette's gone too. More on that in its own subsection. And now Lacroix runs the Raven? What? Why? He records his show in the club? How does that work?
Let us strip away the last vestiges of decorum and civility and reveal our inner selves. Oui, mes amis, it's amateur night at the Raven. And tonight our amateurs will reveal their inner selves by getting naked!
Ugh, this is just embarrassing. This season is when they start delving more into maybe other supernatural things exist, most likely due to it running on the Sci-Fi Channel. Sometimes it works, oftentimes it's just weird. For instance, the token magical Native American episode. Wait, Nick can't touch a ceremonial knife? Apparently other religious items burn him like the cross, except for Buddhas? Luckily for plot convenience, as a child, Tracy got a merit badge in Native American cultures. We meet psychic Native American woman who says she can heal Nick of his darkness, apparently through lots of nuzzling and having sex. So, I guess he and Natalie aren't together anymore? Then this dream blood connection, passes his darkness into her or something? It's weird. It's just weird. Then we have the Exorcist episode.
Nicola, do you remember when Jeanette used to hang out with us?
Nick and Lacroix are imprisoned, their captives saying their murders must be the result of being possessed by the devil. Lacroix doesn't believe in possession. He believes it's an excuse people come up with to get rid of accountability for their actions. But, whoa, that's about to be tested in present day when Nick is possessed. Yep. At first he thinks Nick has decided to join the dark side again, until he realizes he's serving another master. So Satan stole his boyfriend.
He is my creation, my son. I won't let you take him from me.
This episode is really a test for Lacroix, because to admit there is a devil is to admit there is a god. It's he that has to convince Nick to fight for the good that's inside him. And the only way for Nick to come back is to believe that God hasn't abandoned him, thus testing his faith as well. I'd give this episode more shit, but it's really not as bad as the concept sounds. Also, I'm following it up by talking about a vampire dog. It's not weird! This is coupled with a story about Nick adopting a dog, and for crap's sake, really, Lacroix? Do you really have to give Nick a speech about everything?
You can't have a dog, Nicola. Think of all the poop you'll have to scoop. And what is poop but nature's way of trying to tame us?
Lacroix actually turns Nick's dog into a vampire to teach him a lesson? Yeah, why?